Have you ever wondered what it was really like inside the White House during those first few months of the Trump administration?
Yeah, forget the headlines, the day-to-day noise.
Exactly. We're looking at a first-hand account today to maybe uncover some surprising realities behind the scenes.
And we'll also be drawing on some interesting analysis we found.
Oh, right, from that YouTube channel, Mindful Moments.
That's the one. They use AI for book analysis, which can surface some connections and themes that really make you think. It adds another layer to reflection.
Interesting approach. So our main source is Michael Wolff's Fire and Fury.
A controversial book, for sure, but it offers this inside look, or at least a perspective, on the personalities, the power struggles.
Right. Our aim here is just to distill what's reported in these excerpts, the key events, people, the dynamics at play, to give you a clearer picture of that period.
Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, Steve Bannon. He makes quite an entrance early on. There's this scene. He shows up really late for a dinner.
Yeah, looking pretty disheveled, as Wolff describes it. But then, almost immediately, he just takes command of the conversation.
Despite the appearance, just jumps right in.
Right, and starts laying out his strategy for cabinet confirmations. This whole flood the zone idea.
Flood the zone. What exactly did that mean in practice?
Just push them through relentlessly. Overwhelm the process. It really signals a clear, decisive, maybe even aggressive agenda right from the start.
And he had some pretty blunt views on people.
Yeah.
Like General Mattis' Mad Dog.
He did, but then he apparently pivoted to criticizing torture, talking about generals being too liberal, the stupidity, he called it, of the civilian military structure.
So strong opinions about the establishment, clearly.
Definitely. And that skepticism went further. Michael Flynn, for example. He thought Flynn was fine, but, not in the same league as a Mattis or a Kelly.
Which points to what? A shallow bench.
Sort of. A perceived lack of top-tier talent that wasn't, in Bannon's view, never Trump or neocon. They seemed very aware they were outsiders needing to staff up quickly.
There's also that weird story about Bannon trying to recruit Roger Ailes after Ailes left Fox News.
Yeah, to try and undermine Rupert Murdoch, basically.
Why? What was the play there?
Well, Ailes was apparently bitter about his exit from Fox, and Bannon perhaps saw Murdoch as pushing Trump towards moderation.
Ah, so using Ailes' resentment to counter Murdoch's influence? A real power play.
Absolutely. It just shows the complex web of personal histories and, frankly, grudges influencing things behind the scenes. Ideological battles playing out.
Okay, let's turn to Kellyanne Conway's perspective on the campaign itself. She didn't paint a rosy picture.
No, she was quite candid, according to Wolff.
Wow.
Said the RNC under Priebus wasn't that supportive, kind of hedging its bets.
And the campaign.
Underfunded, disorganized. Led by, and this is her own reported quote, the worst candidate in modern political history.
Wow, from the campaign manager. That's something.
But she frames it as them clawing its way back. So there's this sense of being the underdog, maybe fueled by that connection with voters.
It's still wild to think the campaign team, by and large, didn't expect to win.
And maybe didn't even think he should win. That's the implication in the book.
Yet their Trump was at the end apparently quite upbeat, even after the Billy Bush tape, the Comey stuff.
It suggests this remarkable resilience or maybe a detachment from how things usually work in politics, either deep self-belief or just not dwelling on the negatives.
The campaign finances also sounded a bit chaotic. Kushner and Bannon haggling over a loan.
Right, a big loan that became a smaller $10 million contribution, which Trump apparently wanted repaid, immediately.
Doesn't exactly scream well-oiled machine.
No, it really highlights the ad hoc transactional feel of the whole operation. Key players dealing directly with basic finances, very unconventional. That likely carried over,
And then there's Melania Trump's reported reaction. The book says she was horrified at the idea of him winning.
Yeah, concerned about the disruption to their life, especially for their son, wanting to protect that privacy.
A very different perspective from the political ambition driving everything else. A human element.
Definitely. It's a stark contrast.
So, fast forward to after the election, Trump Tower. What was the atmosphere like then?
Wolff describes it as dazed. Friends were shocked and bewildered. Trump himself, though...
What was his focus?
Getting Rupert Murdoch to visit. Apparently Murdoch was delayed and Trump was eager, calling him one of the greats. Which is interesting, right, after all the campaign criticism of media elites.
A total reversal. Now Trump's seeking his approval. And Murdoch was apparently subdued and thrown by the whole situation.
It really captures that scramble as established power, like the media, tried to adjust to this unexpected reality, and Trump still wanting validation.
It's also noted how quickly people around Trump started seeing him differently post-victory.
Oh, absolutely. Suddenly the guy many thought was unprepared is now seen as presidential, just because he won.
But Wolff also suggests underneath that, the assessment was, he knew real estate, maybe, but not much else. Relied on instinct.
Exactly. That reliance on instinct is a recurring theme, a real departure from valuing, say, deep policy knowledge or government experience. It created this dissonance for people.
That brings us back to David Bossie's quote.
The New York versus Washington one.
Yeah, if you can make it in New York, you can't necessarily make it in Washington.
Seems to nail the challenge they faced. It really does. Different worlds, different rules. And Trump apparently didn't grasp the importance of certain Washington roles, like chief of staff.
The book says he didn't know its history. Relied on who?
Longtime retainers, cronies, and family. That's the phrasing. Less focus on experienced Washington hands.
Which explains maybe the nicknames for Don Jr. and Eric Uday and Quasi, and their idea for parallel White House structures.
It sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? But it suggests a real lack of understanding, or maybe respect, for how the executive branch is structured.
And Tom Barrack was considered for chief of staff early on.
He was, yeah. And the book notes Barrack's connections, including to Jeffrey Epstein.
Raises questions about vetting, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And about the kind of advice Trump was initially drawn to.
Then there were the anti-Bannon forces. Who were they?
People like Murdoch, Joe Scarborough, warning Trump against making Bannon chief of staff.
Why? What were the concerns?
His disorganization, mainly. His management style. It shows those internal power struggles were brewing right from day one. A clash between the populist wing and more traditional forces.
Interesting how establishment figures then started reaching out to Trump.
Oh, yeah. Jeff Bezos, despite all the Amazon criticism during the campaign.
Elon Musk pitching Mars.
Apparently so. Stephen Schwartzman offering to set up a business council. Even Anna Wintour showing up at Trump Tower.
So pragmatism kicked in. People trying to get access, maybe influence the agenda.
Looks like it, acknowledging the new reality and trying to engage, despite past issues.
Then there's the whole Russia denial. Trump denying deals or loans.
Right, while also almost casually mentioning he turned down a huge, $2 billion deal in Dubai.
It's a strange contrast. And the quick adoption of the deep state idea.
Yeah, the Trump team embraced that term pretty fast to explain leaks opposition.
Suggests the pre-existing suspicion of the intelligence community.
Absolutely. And provides a narrative to counter criticism and, potentially damaging information coming out. Names like Brennan, Clapper, Susan Rice were associated with it.
They seemed convinced there was this coordinated campaign of leaks.
That was the belief in the White House, according to Wolff. A conspiracy by this deep state network to undermine him.
Even though Kushner was apparently advised he needed to mend fences with the intel community.
Right, but Trump himself kept criticizing the CIA, the FBI, the NSC. There was this disconnect between the advice and his own feelings.
He even thought the Obamas acted disdainfully towards him at that pre-inauguration White House meeting.
That was his perception, yeah. It suggests maybe an insecurity or at least an adversarial stance right as he's taking office. And Wolff mentions his Gulf face during the inauguration itself.
Okay, let's talk communication style. Bannon had that comparison. Obama as a North Star of aloofness.
And Trump as a modern William Jennings Bryan. Passionate, connecting directly, maybe not always factually precise, but effective for some.
But at the same time, Trump craved media approval, despite getting facts wrong and never admitting mistakes.
That's the paradox highlighted in the book, this constant push-pull, attacking the media, but also desperately wanting their validation.
And the defense strategy seemed counterproductive sometimes.
It often did. The more aggressively the team defended claims, especially easily disproven ones, the more intense the media scrutiny became.
People around him were urging him to simmer down.
Reportedly, yes. Friends, staffers, but it rarely seemed to stick, like the whole inauguration crowd size thing.
Right. He blamed Spicer for not making the million phantom souls seem real.
That's the story. It's remarkable. Just disregarding contradictory information, blaming the messenger.
And Kellyanne Conway coining alternative facts.
Which she later said was meant as alternative information, but, the phrase stuck. It became emblematic of that whole dynamic.
We mentioned mindful moments earlier, and exploring different perspectives is useful here. Their analysis and our discussions on related topics can offer ways to think about leadership styles like this.
Definitely. It's worth considering different frameworks. And Wolff gives other examples of Trump's, let's say, flexible relationship with facts. The Time magazine covers.
Claiming he had more covers in one year than anyone, which wasn't true.
Right. And his shifting story about the Martin Luther King Jr. bust in the Oval Office, it paints this picture of someone deeply concerned with image, perhaps over substance or accuracy.
So wrapping this up, what's the big picture from these excerpts?
Well, it paints a picture of the early Trump White House as, frankly, chaotic. Lots of internal disarray, very unconventional leadership, constant power struggles.
And this ongoing battle with the media, the establishment.
Exactly. A real mix of inexperience, ideological clashes, and a leader operating way outside the usual political norms.
So the final thought for you listening is, how might these initial conditions, this specific environment described by Wolff, have shaped what came next?
How did that beginning influence the whole trajectory of the presidency? Something to reflect on.
If you found this discussion insightful, please do subscribe so you don't miss future analyses.
And share it with others who might be interested in this period.
You can also find a link to Michael Wolff's Fire and Fury in the show notes if you want to read the source material yourself.
And most importantly, just keep thinking critically about the information you encounter, wherever it comes from.